He's back. That's the only way to put it, I think. There was a video put out just in the last couple days. First time since July of 2014 that we have seen the Islamic State leader, the ISIS leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. Now, that's the name he has taken on. It's not his given name. But he's actually Ibrahim Awad Ibrahim al-Badri. So that's his real name. At any rate, he is the leader of ISIS, and he said in the video a lot of things, and we got a summation of it from a reporter correspondent Clarissa Ward. Let's listen very quickly.
He is significantly heavier in this video. His beard has changed color. Before it was black. Now it appears to be white or gray with henna at the tips of the beard.
All right, so that's his appearance has changed. Danny Davis is the USA Lieutenant Colonel, retired fellow with Defense Priorities, and our leading expert that we go to on ISIS and terror issues, and he's back with us this morning on the other end of our line. How are you, Danny?
I'm doing really good. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you with us. As I watched the video as well of his speech and compared it to previous ones, and man, has he changed. He looks like a fat old man now.
Yeah, he does, and I think it's metaphorical as much as it is physical. Because, he was at the height of his power in the summer of 2014 that you referenced a minute ago, and he was very, very confident, and, and he was looking fit and trim, and he was talking about how, hey, you guys have just made me the caliph because, we have now established the caliphate for the first time in centuries, and, like we're on the launch pad, when in fact he was actually on the death pad because it was really assured from the beginning. They were always the dead men walking because they didn't have the resources or the human capital to ever hold on to what they had. So it was always a matter of time. And now then I think what you see in this video is someone who's saying, hey, I still want to be relevant. And even though everything I told you we lost, now I'm changing my story that, well, now we're going to just fight underground and, and we're going to keep the struggle up. And it's really hard to recruit people or to get people motivated by that when your message is, hey, I promised a lot of stuff. We lost it all. We've lost tens of thousands of fighters following me, but now I just want you to follow me on a quest that really can't go anywhere. And I don't think that's going to be anywhere near as effective as his original claims were, and what drew lots of fighters from all over the world and all over that part of the Middle East and Syria. I doubt that you're going to see much effectiveness this time.
The fact that he referenced the attacks in Sri Lanka on Easter Sunday when over 300 were killed by the suicide bombers, we heard all along that it was suspected to be an ISIS operation or ISIS inspired, and he seems to have taken credit for it. So doesn't that indicate that they are still capable of making those individual attacks very painful for people in other countries?
Well, most of the evidence, and I think you can see this because this is by no means anything unusual among ISIS or any of these Islamic hate groups that you see spring up all over the place, is that something happens and they want to take credit for it. So they'll put out a press release and, oh, yeah, that was actually us. And it could even be that some people was, quote, inspired by that. But what we find when you actually do some detailed examination into these so-called franchise groups is that there are actually local actors that have their own interests and own motivations, and they will take on the name that has a bigger title than they do to help draw more interest and more resources to themselves. So basically, it's just like somebody setting up a hamburger joint down the street and calling it McDonald's so that they can draw people and bank on the known name. But they themselves are still, just a small town or a local threat, and that's why they acted locally. And I think that's what you're seeing here. The bottom line is that certainly terrorism remains an issue and an important issue, and they can, terrorists and somebody who's willing to murder and kill innocent people for their own twisted purposes are going to continue to act around it. It's really important that we remain vigilant, whether it's called ISIS, whether it's called al-Nusra, whether it's called, anything else. We have to remain vigilant all the time because the threat is there because there are twisted people. But in terms of the overall, what was a coherent ISIS, back in 2014 and up until they lost their caliphate, I think that they're on the way down. That doesn't mean that somebody else isn't going to take the baton and try to rise from it.
Well, exactly. I mean, we just had this guy in California arrested who was planning an attack, and he was inspired by ISIS. They inspire other people to violence, and I'm not sure what the draw is.
Yeah, I mean, really, the draw, I think, is that there are people who are bent towards violence, and then they're going to naturally be drawn to others who are. And if anyone gives credibility to that and affirming that sort of mentality, I think that they're going to naturally draw to that and try to claim allegiance to it, or at least affiliation with it, because again, that validates themselves and gives them some sort of meaning in such a twisted way. And it's just a really unfortunate aspect of our world right now that there are no shortage of people like that. And so that's why it's so important that we continue to have really strong, especially domestic cooperation between federal, state, and local law enforcement officials and our really robust global ISR to try to identify any threats that may even plot against the United States or our citizens elsewhere, because the threat continues to this day.
Danny, we're out of time, but I got to ask you this final question real quickly. How important is it to take this guy out, to maybe pull a Navy SEAL operation, SEAL Team 6, like we did with bin Laden?
No, I don't. I mean, no more than any other terrorist that's out there that wants to do something, because he's a figurehead, and if we take him out just like we did with bin Laden, I mean, you didn't see any kind of a drop in terrorism because we took that guy out. He's just a figurehead, and there'll be another figurehead after him. The real thing we have to do is put our emphasis on getting at the root cause of terrorism, not any particular figurehead, because there's just too many to replace them.
The root cause being?
Well, that's a really multi-headed situation there, because the underlying is it's a flaw in the human being that wants to go to violence. I mean, there's some things you can do to minimize it with, things like trying to, help people find jobs and economic advancement and not isolating people, because that's some of the domestic causes here. But ultimately, you really just have to defend against it, because some things just can't be fixed.
Danny, always great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for the insights.
Always my pleasure.
All right. Danny Davis, the USA Lieutenant Colonel retired, who's now a fellow with Defense Priorities, here on the Frank Beckmann Show.